What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Edge DFS. As usual, we're talking showdown. We've got a interesting game for Thursday Night Football. We've got the Giants versus the Washington football team. Another scheduling win, right? Jeez, man, what's been going on with these? Although, I will say that game on Monday night was pretty damn good. It started out terrible, but it was pretty good, right? Ellie Hernandez, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
I'm doing pretty good, bro. Yeah, I mean, the Monday night game was okay. It ended up finishing pretty spectacular fashion, but it was a very sloppy and poor NFL performance by both teams.
Yeah.
But I'm actually a little bit more excited than you probably are for Thursday night. I don't know what it is, but I like the Washington football team a little bit, and maybe it's because of their underdog status, right? You know, they're just kind of seen as a joke. It's fun to kind of root for them.
I do like them, dude. I like them too.
Yeah, and like I don't know, man. I have a really large amount of exposure to Logan Thomas in my best ball leagues as well. So obviously, I want to pull for him a little bit. But I'm actually kind of excited for this game, dude. I like Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, and Logan Thomas, and I just kind of want to see how they grow and develop into professional athletes.
Most of the value is going to come from Washington. I think Washington is going to be super popular. I think the key to this is finding those, one or two players from the Giants that have a ceiling type game. We'll get into the Vegas lines and the over under and all that here in a minute, but this is going to be according to Vegas, a low scoring game. So when that happens, we got to really figure out, those one or two guys, even if they get you 11 fantasy points, sometimes they might be in the optimal depending on their salary. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. We've got about 3 or 4 value plays that I think you guys are going to really want to check out a little bit later in the show when we get to the breakdown. Some decent options, most of them coming from the Washington side of things, but there's one guy on the Giants that I think you can go a little bit heavier than the field on, and I think he's around in the 3K area. So, anyways, let's get going with it here, Ellie. I do want to talk about Week 1 a little bit. I want to talk about some overreactions that we may have to Week 1, and if you have any bold takes or any overreactions based on what happened in Week 1, any thoughts on that, and anything that jumped out to you that you might overreact on for the rest of the season?
I think the easiest thing is, as a Cardinals fan, to think that my team is elite after their performance and just kind of absolute decimation of the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
That was the most dominant win. I was talking with actually Bookie, Ian, Zach at dinner a little bit earlier. We were talking about it. Like the last time we had a win like this was Tyrann Mathieu pick 6 game against Colin Kaepernick, where he had more interceptions the first half than he did completions. So that's the last time this team has been dominant, and I think that's there's a lot of overreactions to get from that game, and I think the first is kind of overreacting to the Cardinals defense. I don't know that they're going to be consistently that good moving forward, but I don't think there's anything to overreact on the offensive side of the ball. But if you look at the other side with Tennessee Titans, all 3 of their big guys got shut down, and I don't think anybody's going to overreact on Derrick Henry. Everyone knows what he's going to do.
He'll get his.
Late in the season when people don't want to tackle 270 pounds anymore, that's when he'll start getting his 250-yard games.
Yeah.
But A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, that was very interesting to see, and I'm kind of curious to see how the field reacts to it. And, I think it's also something to just keep in mind for main slate on Sunday, too. We saw a lot of stuff that we didn't necessarily expect, like the Packers being another big one.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Rodgers, they scored 3 points on the road against Jameis Winston and the Saints team, right? Don't overreact to that. We know we've been knowing that Sean Payton is a hell of a coach, right?
Yeah.
So his team was going to come in prepared, and who knows what's going on in Aaron Rodgers' head, but he's still the multiple MVP winner, and he's gonna make up for it. So I definitely think people are going to be overreacting pretty heavily to his Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams performance in that game. But I don't think it's necessarily anything to worry about. And there's really a huge edge to be gained by paying attention to that overreaction, right? We have 1 game of sample size, and you can't just throw out all your projections and expectations out the window. I mean,
One game,
come
dude. One
Sunday,
game.
right? I mean, dude, if people stop playing Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers because of one game,
Yeah.
like I'm going to be all over them on Sunday.
Yeah.
So it's just something to keep in mind. Don't get too crazy with the week one. Everyone thinks the edge is really in week one. The edge is in week two when everyone changes their goddamn strategy because they got scared.
Remember, Jacksonville won week one last year and then lost the rest 15 in a row. So, don't overreact.
The Cardinals went 4-0 one year and then lost 9 in a row.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that happens all the time, especially with, Cardinals fans we know. Get to past half the season, then you can kind of figure out where your team's going to be. I mean, last year too, they were great.
And then just fell apart.
Kyler was an MVP candidate up until weeks 6 or 7 or something like that, and then it all went downhill. I know he got injured later in the year, but all right. So let's just jump into this matchup. All right. So the Giants traveling to Washington. Weather should be fine. There's a little bit of rain in the middle of the day, but it should go away. Nothing to really worry about here. I'm actually kind of surprised by the odds here. The money line -174 for the football team. At home, they're 3.5 point favorites. They're usually getting that 3 points. I don't think it's that close. I think it should be a little bit higher than this. And you're talking about a 40.5 over under. Look, we've got Danny Dimes versus Taylor Heineke. This is not one of these matchups that's going to be a barn burner. But 40 points and a 3.5 spread for Washington. Do you think that the Giants really have a shot in this game?
Yeah, absolutely do. I mean, just looking at this, I can comfortably take the over. I think the Giants can cover, and I think that the odds should be closer to like 120 Washington, maybe 105 New York. This should be closer to a pick 'em, in my opinion.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, dude, Washington's down their starting quarterback. Like, I don't care what anybody says. Tyler, the Heineke man is not better than Daniel Jones, right? Like,
according to the salary this week, he is.
Well, and then you have Saquon Barkley on the other side, right? There's a lot more talent on the Giants roster. Well, okay, let me be careful about how I say that. The Giants roster has a little bit more rounded out talent. They should have a little bit more consistency at that core piece, being the quarterback. And Heineke, because he had a couple good showings last year, and he did fine last week. I don't know that they're really that much of a favorite here. Their defense is solid, and I know Antonio Gibson can get there, Terry McLaurin and Logan Thomas, but I don't know. This is a division game. You can throw all that shit out the window, man. I mean, Saquon Barkley gets off the ground. Like, good luck catching up with him. We all know what he can do. Yeah. So I don't know, man. I think it's going to be a lot closer than what it is.
And I think one thing we need to keep an eye on throughout this breakdown is I think Washington's defense is going to be pretty heavily owned in this matchup. They're coming in, projections right now are like 20%. I think it's going to be more than that. With the low total and the fact that we all know that Washington's defense is pretty good. And so far this year, the Giants offense has been that first game, it was bad. I rewatched it today. It was not fun. They are not a good team, at least in week one. So hopefully they can get over that. They've added Galladay, and I think he can be a solid player. But Saquon can't do anything, man. He can't do anything. I think he had 20 something yards rushing. He had 2 targets for a catch. It was not pretty. And what I saw with Washington was actually really interesting. They could have won that. They should have actually won that game against the Chargers. And I think the Chargers and Herbert are going to be pretty damn good this year. They should have absolutely won that game. They were leading in the fourth. Antonio Gibson, who was absolutely crushing in this game, fumbles in the first few minutes of the fourth quarter on his own 4-yard line. 3 plays later, the Chargers take the lead. And that's pretty much it. And one thing to keep an eye on here is the Washington football team's defense. You would think that that's their strongest element on their team. They gave up 4 third down conversions at the end of that game, basically with around 4 minutes left. The Chargers ran it down all the way from inside their own 20, all the way down into the red zone and kneeled it with no time left. they could, if the defense could have stopped them, and they could have actually had a chance to win that game. So that, I think Washington is a solid team. I think they're a much better team than the Giants, but they're also not very consistent. I don't think that they're very clutch. That's something to think about here. So, anyways, let's move over to the injuries. We've got a few to talk about. Obviously, we know about Saquon. He was limited throughout the week, and now he's questionable. So there's really nothing else to talk about here. Antonio Gibson was limited on Monday. He's a full participant both Tuesday, Wednesday. He's not even designated for injury at all. Evan Ingram's out. That's actually a big deal again, because there's going to be an option behind them that we'll want to look at. So Saquon being questionable, he's at 10K. He's more expensive than Antonio Gibson this week. What do we do with Saquon? I think that's the biggest part of this whole talk, is what do we do with Saquon?
I mean, I don't know, dude. I think I think it's going to depend on his price. I think he's going to be viable. The problem is for me, I just want to get more Antonio Gibson, and I think it's going to be difficult to play both running backs. I know we don't mind negative correlation when we run our showdowns, but that's not one I'm too much a fan of.
Like a handcuff, like with Gibson and McKissick or something like that.
Right, that's something I would be fine with. But running Antonio Gibson and Saquon Barkley,
yeah.
Right,
it's impossible. It's impossible.
Now, here's the one way where I think it might be worth doing. If they start getting Saquon Barkley involved in the passing game, I mean, that is a different edge that he can add to. And when he tore it up before he had his injury, that is an aspect they got him involved in. He was catching balls out in the flat and getting involved in the screen game.
Yeah.
So that is an absolute route that you can take to stack him and Antonio Gibson. But other than that, I don't think I'm going to be doing that much, because I really want to get a decent amount of Antonio. I think I'm going to have to limit my exposure to Saquon Barkley. But here's the other thing. Like, honestly, this is where it gets interesting to just have leverage plays, right? So instead of worrying about, like, we're going to get into this a little bit later, but instead of worrying about, playing the cheap chalk wide receiver that is likely going to be on the slate, if we start seeing Saquon Barkley come in at 14 or 15%, 20% ownership, I would just rather pivot off of somebody else and play him, because, having 40% exposure to Saquon Barkley is much safer than hoping that some random dude goes off.
Yeah.
So it's just, I definitely think that we need to keep an eye on the projection for him specifically, and just kind of wait for more news. Maybe the news is going to scare enough people off that I want to play him, but right now, I'm leaning more towards Antonio Gibson and kind of trying to not worry about the injury status there.
I totally agree, man. I mean, look, Saquon, he got 47% of the snaps in his first game back after a major injury. That's 29 snaps, and Devontae Booker had 39% at 24 snaps. So I think maybe as long as he's progressing, I think you'll start to see, it creep over that 50% mark for him. He's their best player by far. They want to get him the ball. Everyone's fighting for their jobs at this point in New York. They have to do whatever they have to do. They're not going to save this guy. They're not going to try to save his mileage. They're going to try to put him out there and play him to win now. So I agree. It's scary though, because he could literally come out and he could play the first quarter and be out. It's incredibly scary. I'm getting Ronald Jones vibes sometimes with this. Except for, it's an injury issue with Saquon. We all know that Saquon's the top 5 running back as long as he's not injured. All right, let's get to the breakdown here. Break it down. Throw us a like, guys. We appreciate it. Subscribe. We're doing showdown football for every game this year. We like to get deep with this stuff. We're gonna go deep into this breakdown. We're gonna talk about every player in our player pool. We're going to talk about the guys we like, the guys we don't like. Let's start off with a guy I don't really like, Daniel Jones. He's at 10.4K. Now, he didn't have a great game last week, but he did have some rushing upside. I think both of these guys have good rushing upside. But both these guys are over 10K. Who do you like more? I think the field likes Heineke more. Daniel Jones has that stigma behind him. But we saw him last year, with that. He had that, 70, 80-yard run against Philly. We know he can run the ball.
And fell on his face.
Fell on his face. Yeah. He got tripped by a ghost. So what do we do here? Look, I think this is the 1 week where you could potentially fade both quarterbacks in your lineup. I just don't know. I don't know if in a 40-point total, if that's going to be a smart thing to do, because these guys are touching the ball every single time. There's not going to be a lot of scoring in this game potentially. So thoughts on Heineke, thoughts on Jones. They're both around the same price. If you had to go under the field on one of them, who would it be?
I think I'd be going under on Daniel Jones. I mean, either way, based on the projection that I'm seeing, I'm not really that concerned about getting exposure to either of them. The only problem is just that the opportunity cost is going to be a lot higher with these particular guys, just because they are priced where they are. It does mean if you play even one of them, you're probably going to have to fade one of these other studs that you got. I think it's important to look at it from a stack perspective. Then in that case, if you're going to run Logan Thomas and Terry McLaurin, then you probably want to run it with Taylor Heineke. And honestly, I don't think it's terrible to throw Saquon Barkley in that stack, for example. But again, you're going to have to be a little bit creative here, just based on where they're priced at. But that also might shift the ownership a little bit here too. We've seen Daniel Jones do okay on Thursday night games. For whatever reason, the Giants had a bunch of primetime games last year.
In 2019, 2020 was not so nice for him, but 2019 he had some ceiling games.
Well, even if you look at some of his performance for last year, he's in the 19 20s just as much as he is, or he's in the 16 plus range just as much as he is under. So, I don't think it's terrible. If you think that he's going to get 17 or 18 fantasy points, there's a good chance he's going to be in the optimal lineup. So, football is weird, man. I think you need to go through and kind of just look at your projections. Do you think Daniel Jones is going to throw for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns? If so, then update your projections to reflect that. And then just build your lineups based on what that means from there. And I think that's really kind of how I'm going to have to attack it tomorrow night, is just focusing on more what I think these quarterbacks are going to do in the specific game script, and then kind of prioritize my builds that way.
I think what I might do tomorrow is, if I have 80 lineups or 100 lineups, depending on how many I do, I'm going to game script in chunks. I think, 50% of my lineups, I really think that Washington is going to win a low-scoring game, and try to set my rules and set my exposures based on that, and then do another, do 20% a shootout. Kind of go down that road and really kind of zoom in on my overall portfolio as to how I think these games are going to go. I usually don't do that, but I'm kind of scared this week because this game could turn out in multiple different ways. This could turn out a shootout. It really could. Danny Dimes had a 90% QB rating. He threw for 267 yards and a touchdown. He ran the ball okay. He fumbled at one point, which is, that's kind of if he runs the ball quite a bit, he's probably going to fumble at least once. But he had 22 fantasy points. That's not bad. If he's at 22 fantasy points this week, he'll be in the optimal. So I think if he's coming in much lower than Heineke, I might go way over the field on Daniel Jones this week. But I do like Heineke for the fact that he can run the ball. He's a squirmy little fella. He can run around, and he can get you 50 yards rushing easily, which is huge. And he might be able to get you a little naked bootleg in the red zone for a touchdown or something like that. If that's the case, he's definitely gonna be one of the top plays on this slate. So let's move over to running back. Let's start with Washington. So look, we've got Antonio Gibson at 9.6K, J.D. McKissick at 2.2K, and Jarrett Patterson at $400. So Gibson absolutely crushed last week. Now he kind of was the linchpin to them losing. He fumbled that ball, and they ended up taking the Chargers ended up taking the lead 3 plays later. and all went downhill from there. But he was the absolute best player on that team. He had 65% of the snaps at running back. He had 20 rushes. He also led the team in receptions. So Antonio Gibson, you think of McKissick as the guy that kind of gets those receptions out of the backfield. Well, we liked McKissick last year, and he had a couple of ceiling games. He only got 36% of the snaps. He only got one reception. So Antonio Gibson is that guy. They're going to pass him the ball as much as humanly possible. They're going to hand him the ball off. He's going to be on the field quite a bit. So do you have to just go double the field almost on Gibson this week? I know he's at 9.6K, but I love this guy. I think he'll be easily the highest scoring player on this slate.
Yeah, man. I'm going to have an awful lot of exposure to Antonio Gibson. And, quite frankly, I think you can just take him and one of the pass catchers, either McLaurin or Logan Thomas. And, if you want to get different, I think you can fade Taylor Heineke in that particular build and then go Daniel Jones, another pass catcher or two. And, but yeah, I want as much exposure to Antonio Gibson as I can possibly get. The dude is just, and what do you have, 20 carries last week?
20 carries, yeah.
Carries.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's insane. And if he's only playing 70% of the snaps and getting, 20 carries, and that's usage on almost every snap that he was in. So, or a pretty significant, solid number of the snaps. So, I want as much of them as I can. Now, if we're looking at the other guys, I think you're going to have a little bit more insight into Jaret Patterson, but I think they're worth taking stabs on because you're going to need to find different guys. But I think the world might actually be onto the J.D. McKissick trick. Like last year, it was cool, but
it was. Yeah, we got disappointed a few times. I agree. I was high on him. I 2.2K. It's tempting, man. It's tempting to just click jam him into 60% of your lineups and just. Yeah. And you kind of feel good about it because he's one of these guys that can get you 30 fantasy points. If you look at last year, some of these numbers are absolutely crazy when it comes to targets. He had 15 targets in week 10, 14 targets. He had 10 targets, 10, 10, 8. I mean, absolutely crushed it. Now, when Heineke started playing, it went down a little bit. Now, I don't know if there's any correlation between that. Maybe it was just the way the game was going. But he didn't really impress in week 1. Like I said, he only had 36% of the snaps. Now, it's a one-game sample size. It doesn't mean a whole lot. But we can kind of feel out where these rotations are going. It's kind of important. Now, that's why week 1 was so hard to break down on this show because we just didn't know who was getting the snaps, who was getting the targets. I think we can kind of get a little bit better idea, but it's not gospel yet. It's only one game. So McKissick, I like him at 2,200. I think he's a good option. He's coming in under 20%, and possibly around closer to 10%. If that's the case, man, there's no reason why this guy can't get you 4 or 5 receptions, a touchdown, and 3 or 4 carries, maybe even around the goal line for draw plays on third down, something like that. Now, one guy that's interesting is Jaret Patterson. Now, I might have 1 or 2 lineups with him. He's $400. $400. There is a lot of risk. Don't get me wrong, but he doesn't have to do a lot to pay off that $400. And I know that raw points are important, but it allows you to stack a lot of these big guys that you really want in. Jaret Patterson's undrafted free agent, signed from Buffalo this year, or University of Buffalo. This guy actually absolutely crushed it. He 8 touchdowns in a single game, tying the NCAA record. Most rushing yards in a game for that team, 409. I think he was 8 or 10 yards short of the all-time record. He grew up 8 miles from this field. In week 1, he didn't have a lot of carries. He had 2 carries, but they were really high on him. I think he's the guy that if we're in the fourth quarter and they're ahead, I think Antonio Gibson gets a breather, and Jaret Patterson's the guy that comes in and gets those rushing attempts. He only had 2 attempts, and I think he didn't have a lot of percentage of the snaps. He had pretty low, actually. What is it? Yeah, only 7%. So only had 4 snaps last week. So I'm not telling you to jam this guy in. I'm just telling you that Jaret Patterson at $400, I think you can consider him in a few of your lineups because he's going to get a couple carries in this game. And depending on your game script, if Washington's leading in the fourth quarter, he might get a couple extra carries and just kind of pad those stats a little bit. So, anything else to add before we switch over?
No, I think you nailed it, man.
All right. So let's go to the Giants. So Saquon's at 10K. He's more expensive than Antonio Gibson, which I think is kind of crazy. I know they're pricing him for his upside, but he's just not back 100% yet. They're not going to... I mean, this guy's the franchise player. I mean, he's their best... He's their only... If Saquon Barkley wasn't on this team, there would be no hope for the future for this entire team. Do you agree? I mean, he's a star if he can stay healthy. So yeah, they're not going to rush him. They're not going to rush him back. They're probably going to have a 500 season. But like I said in the opener, also these coaches their jobs are on the line this year, so it could go either way. So I don't know. Saquon, 10K. What do you do?
I'm not going to get too crazy with him. My exposure to him is going to be completely dependent on ownership. And maybe if I need him for a couple game scripts. Now, just to be clear, this is kind of what I said about Josh Jacobs the other night, and I ended up getting much more exposure to him than I expected. Now, granted, Josh Jacobs ended up being actually 14% owned.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, like that's a no-brainer, right? If you're getting Saquon Barkley at 20%, you need to play him. You need to have some exposure to him, regardless of what's going on. Unless he's actually projected to be out, we should be anticipating for him to grow in his role in this offense, right? So if he played 50% of the snaps or even 30% on Sunday, then I would expect him to be playing a little bit more this upcoming Thursday night, right? Maybe that's why he played so few on Sunday, was so that he could be ready for the primetime game and really just kind of feel how that knee is going in a live situation. So, I mean, there's some real stuff to be keeping an eye on here. But, beyond that, like, let's not sleep on the Washington football team's defense. Mm-hmm. They are really good. They're probably top 5 in the NFL. So, I don't know if Daniel Jones is going to take off enough stress with his passing threat, I guess, to help Saquon out. Yeah. And they need Saquon Barkley to really be the one that's fueling the play action and taking the stress off Daniel Jones. So, I mean, do you think he's there yet? Probably not. So I think it's something to keep in mind. I don't know if I really want any of these backs at all, just from top to bottom.
I agree, man. I think you can fade the Giants running backs altogether almost in this game. Mm-hmm. At least that's what I'm tempted to do based on watching that first game. And just based on watching last year with them. Devontae Booker is at 2,800. I think he's a solid option as a low-owned, low-price guy around that McKissick area. I like Devontae Booker actually a little bit more than McKissick, which is I never thought I'd say. But we saw Devontae Booker last year with the Raiders have some pretty decent games. I was pretty high on him. He disappointed pretty much every time, but he had a lot of opportunity last year. In the first game, like I said, he had 39% of the snaps, 24 total snaps. Nothing really to write home about for week 1 for him, but he did have like one hell of a one-handed catch. That was kind of, it was nice. It was a nice catch. So, maybe they utilize him in the pass game a little bit more if Saquon's not feeling it. He didn't do great. Look, he had 2.3 fantasy points, nothing to write home about. 4 rushes for 7 yards, 1 target, 1 reception. But depending on how this game goes, at 2,800, I think you can consider getting him into a few lineups. He's going to be around 12 to 15% owned. Just think about it. Brightwell, I'm not really huge on Brightwell. I'm not really huge on Elijah Penny. Brightwell had 13% of the snaps. He had 1 target. Really nothing to talk about down there. I don't think I'll even have them in my player pool. I'd rather go with, on the other side, the $400 guy, Patterson. There we go. These dudes are all blending together. I'd rather go with Patterson on the other side here. So, anything else to add before we move on to wide receivers? Do you like Booker at all?
No, I don't care about any of these guys.
Yeah. I think you could fade him, but also Saquon it possibly has the highest ceiling on this entire slate.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley, still Saquon Barkley.
He's still Saquon Barkley. So you got to at least consider trying to jam him in. He's going to be top 3 owned potentially, at least as of now. Now if that starts to plummet, if news comes out tomorrow that he's not doing as well, or that questionable mark holds all the way up until lock, it's going to go down. And I might use that as leverage. I might just jam him in. I might just replace him with Danny Dimes or Heineke and just pop him in and see what happens. So wide receivers for the Giants. So Shepard is clearly the guy in this offense. He's at 8K. Now Golladay did get a couple targets. He had 6 targets for 4 receptions. Shepard had 9 targets for 7 receptions, and Shepard had one hell of a touchdown. That was all him. He caught the ball. Nice run, yards after catch. Shepard is, in my opinion, the guy in this offense when it comes to the receivers. Slayton is kind of, Slayton's there. I mean, Slayton had 7 targets for 3 receptions. He had 70% of the snaps. Shepard had 95%. Golladay had 85%. Golladay had a really good catch too. So all these guys are kind of jammed together here. I think it's, in my opinion, it's 1 Shepard, 2 Golladay, 3 Slayton. But Slayton can hit a home run every now and then. So thoughts on the big 3 here, if you will. Who's your favorite option here? They're all kind of jammed together in salary too.
Yeah, Sterling Shepard's going to be my favorite option. He will always be my favorite option for wide receiver there. But Kenny Golladay, he's at one point, I'm pretty sure he was called Mini-Tron. Kenny Golladay does have the ability to go off. We all know it. So right now, I mean, Sterling Shepard's cheaper and he's projected at lower ownership. And remember, this is something to keep in mind is week 1 bias, right? We know that he kind of went off week 1, so people are going to say, oh, well, he's not going to go off week 2.
Yeah.
So that people might come off Sterling Shepard and say it's Kenny Galladay's time. That is not a correct argument, right? Yeah, it doesn't matter what happened last week. Anything can happen on this game. So if you think Sterling Shepard's the guy, you play him. And at about 10% less ownership than Kenny, and $200 cheaper, I don't mind prioritizing him. But from there, I really only want the 3. I want Sterling Shepard, Kenny Golladay, and Darius Slayton in that order. I mean, Darius even had 7 targets. So.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he had a shot at some of these plays. He could have easily gone the other way to Slayton. Yeah,
and we know where the ball's going. We know the targets are being concentrated between these 3 guys. So, excuse me, I think you aren't terribly well off to just run Daniel Jones and 2 of these pass catchers. So that's probably going to be some of my strategy. And I think there's going to be a little bit of leverage in attacking it that way. Mm-hmm. I mean, especially if Darius Slayton is projected for sub 20% ownership on a 7-target game. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Daniel Jones is gonna throw the ball in this game. He might get 50 attempts in this game.
Yeah, they're going to be playing behind. I don't understand what it seems. Again, that's my point here a little bit too, right? It's they're going to have opportunities to make plays. And Sterling Shepard proved it. You can get 9 targets and get 6 receptions and 100 yards, but that 1 reception for 40 yards and a touchdown was 11 points. That makes a massive difference.
I think, me personally, I'm gonna make a rule to jam in every one of my lineups at least one of these 3 guys. And I might make a rule too that if Daniel Jones is in that lineup, then I want 2 of these guys, because I think there's enough attempts to go around between all 3 of them. I think they all 3 can crush in this game, particularly.
Tony and Board aren't getting or whoever these other guys are. I don't even know who you have on your side over there, but we know these 3 are going to get it.
Yeah, Tony had 2 targets for 2 receptions. Board had 1 target for 1 reception. I'm not even going to have these guys in my player pool.
Right.
In fact, I'm going to exit them out now because they're just not. These are the 3 guys.
Well, when we go over to the other side too, I mean, you'll see why it's not worth even paying $1,800 for Kadarius Toney.
Yeah. No, totally. So let's do that. So Scary Terry's at 9K. That's a good price for him. It really is. He made a catch last week on the sideline. That was just unbelievable. Crazy. So he's 9K. Now, the number 2 guy in this offense, now, obviously, Curtis Samuel is on short-term IR. He should be back after week 4 or something like that. But De'Ami Brown, the rookie, he's the number 2 guy here. Now, let's see. He had 92% of the snaps last week. He had four receptions. Not bad. Or was it 4 targets? Let's look. Let's look what he's got here. He had 4 targets, 1 reception. So look, nothing to write home about, but he was on the field a lot. He didn't do anything fantasy-wise, but he's at 1,400. He's the number 2 option in this offense. Now, you could argue that Humphreys could be there as well, but at 4,800, Humphreys scares me. I don't know if I want a whole lot of Humphreys in this particular game. So McLaurin, Brown, Humphreys. Let's talk about those guys first, and then we can get to these one-off guys. So you just jam in McLaurin, obviously, right? This guy's a star. He's a clear number 1 target. But thoughts on Brown and Humphreys?
So I do want to clarify one piece on McLaurin, though. So what I'm going to be looking for in my builds will probably be 2 of the 3. So Antonio Gibson, Terry, and then probably fading Logan. Or Logan, Terry, fading Gibson. So that's kind of going to be my strategy there. So if I have Gibson, Logan, then I'll be fading Terry. So that is one piece I do want to call out. Now, 4,800 Adam Humphreys is ridiculous. I do expect him to get a little bit more involved in the offense just because he does have that veteran leadership. So there is a potential that he can go out there and probably get you 80 and a touchdown. So I don't hate having some exposure to him, but 4,800 is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
De'Ami Brown is my guy. I'm probably a little biased because I got a decent amount of exposure to him in best ball. But at 1,400 for a guy who's, I mean, even if worst case scenario, he's getting number three reps. I mean, I'm pretty sure we run 3 wide receiver sets pretty consistently on the Washington side. So, I think he's going to get some run. I mean, 97% of the snaps last week. That's pretty crazy.
92, but yeah, pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, anything above 90 for a rookie in week 1 is pretty solid. So.
Yeah, he's a 3rd-round pick. He's not a 1st-round pick, but they like him. And with Curtis Samuel out, they need somebody to fill in.
Yeah, $1,400 too. I mean,
$1,400, dude.
It's not risky.
The amount of opportunity is big in Showdown. If he's on the field, you feel good about him. There's always hope if he's on the field, especially at $1,400. Anything can happen. Anything can happen when you're on the field. If you're sitting on the sideline, not so much. And speaking of that, we got DeAndre Carter at $200. I think you can think about this guy a little bit. He's a dynamic kick and punt returner. He's fast. And $200, he was on he didn't get a lot of snaps. I think he only got a couple snaps last week. But at $200, he's one of these gadget guys. I think Curtis Samuel last year was kind of that running back / shovel pass. Kind of what we thought Duvernay was going to be like on Monday night. DeAndre Carter could get a couple of those options, and at $200, man, you got to think of a guy like that. Cam Sims, look, he's $1,000. Maybe you get him in one lineup. I'm not too high on him. He only had, I think, 1 target last week, 1 reception. Nothing really to talk about. Any interest in any of these bottom guys, or are you just sticking with the McLaurin and Brown?
Yeah, I'm sticking with McLaurin and Brown. I don't want any of these other guys.
All right, let's move over to tight end. So Logan Thomas, former quarterback, former Cardinals quarterback, which is interesting. This guy has made a second career for himself. I'm really happy to see him doing well. 7,400, man. That's low. That's really low. This guy's a beast in the red zone. Last week, the Chargers, the Chargers looked. What am I looking at here? No, I'm looking at the other team. My bad. Anyways, Logan Thomas, 7,400. Ricky Seals-Jones had actually 34% of the snaps, I believe. So I'm not going to play Ricky Seals-Jones, but at $200, if the guy's on the field for more than 30% of the snaps, you got to talk about it. So like you said, you're going to have that holy trinity of Gibson, McLaurin, and Thomas and force two of those guys in. Do you like Thomas more than McLaurin at that price?
Yes. And
Yeah, me too.
he's lower owned.
Yeah, me too.
I
Much
yeah,
lower owned. Much lower owned.
he's probably my favorite play in the slate. I mean, at 7,400, like I mean, he should be. I'm not saying he needs to be up there with like Waller, Kelsey, and Kittle prices, but he should be damn close. I mean, he's just been consistently getting targets, and I think the more that you have backup quarterbacks playing, the more that they're going to want to hit their consistent tight end.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And you know, I think he's a second tier tight end behind, like you said, Kelsey, Kittle, Waller. He's the next level underneath that, I think. And I think this year he's gonna have a big year. The problem is you got Heineke at quarterback. If Fitzpatrick was healthy this whole year, I think he could have made the Pro Bowl.
I think we see Dwayne Haskins again this year.
He's on Pittsburgh, bro.
Oh, well, maybe we'll see him in Pittsburgh then.
Well, it's possible. You know, maybe he plays next year. Maybe he's the Jameis Winston of next year.
Or maybe Nick Foles ends up on Washington.
That wouldn't surprise me. All right, so let's move over to the other side. Let's go to the Giants. So, obviously, Evan Ingram is out, and thank God for that, because I don't want to have to even think about playing Evan Ingram ever again. Because the one time you don't play him, he scores you fucking 3 touchdowns probably. But this week, you got Kyle Rudolph at 3,200. Now, Kyle Rudolph, I don't love him. We've seen the upside. We've seen his upside in Minnesota. We know he can, you know, get targeted in the red zone. We know he can score touchdowns. He had 5 targets for 2 receptions, but he also had 2 end zone targets. So they were looking at him down when they were in the red zone. Not only red zone targets, but in zone targets. He had a chance to score 2 touchdowns last week. 77% of the snaps. I like Kyle Rudolph at 3,200 this week. I like him a lot. So what I was getting when I was on the other side was Jared Cook looked pretty good against Washington football team's defense. Kyle Rudolph is kind of, you know, he's an athletic wide, you know, ball catching tight end. He's not as good as Jared Cook, but Kyle Rudolph can catch a couple passes down the middle and get you 1 or 2 touchdowns. 3,200. Are you interested?
Yes, very much so. I think he's an interesting way to build the double stack with the quarterbacks. If you throw him and De'Ami Brown in there, I think it's going to open up a little bit of flexibility so that you can take a guy like Terry McLaurin and potentially Logan Thomas and maybe somebody else in the mid-tier. So I think we'll see kind of what that opens up when we get to the builds here. But I'm going to have a healthy exposure to Kyle Rudolph. I mean, not as much as I would to De'Ami Brown. I mean, just the price gap is pretty significant there.
Yeah.
But at 3,200, it's definitely viable to get him into a significant amount of lineups. And I'm just assuming my ownership projection here is wrong because it's under 5%.
Yeah.
If it's under 5%, then I'm just going to triple that.
I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong because I still have an ownership projection for Evan Ingram. So I think they're going to figure this out as we get later in the day. And if he comes in
to 2025.
Yeah, I was thinking 2025 because look, he's 3,200 and he's a starting tight end and he's on the field quite a bit. And we know Kyle Rudolph. We've seen him before in fantasy. We know what his upside is. He's at the end of his career at this point, but I think he can still get you a few touchdowns this season. If he comes in at 10% owned, I'm going to go heavy. I'm going to go 30% probably with him. But we'll see. We'll see where he ends up. All right. So kicker. We're gonna look at kickers because in a game like this where the total is around 40 points, you got to look at the kickers. So Dustin Hopkins is at 3,800. He missed a big field goal in the fourth quarter, or maybe it was at the end of the third. Anyways, he did miss a huge field goal there that did not help his team out. So not saying that there's going to be a situation where, you know, it's a 4th down and 3 and they choose to go for it, but maybe they just don't have faith in him as much when you miss a big field goal like that. Graham Gano's at 3,600. I think you got to consider both of these guys. They're probably going to come in around 15 to 20% owned. I think you just got to try to jam them in, make a rule where you don't put both of them in at the same time, obviously. and just see what happens. There's a reason why they removed kickers from the main slate. It's a crapshoot in most cases, right? So what are your thoughts on the kickers?
Yeah, I think I'll have a little bit more Dustin Hopkins than I will Graham Gano. Not a huge fan of Graham, and I don't know. I don't know what to expect from the Giants offense. I mean, we consider kickers when we think drives are going to stall out, but I don't even know if they're going to get drives going. And when they do get drives going, it's usually the result of some big play that turns into a touchdown anyway. So, like, I mean, last week, what they scored 20 points, and Graham Gano had a field goal. That's
and they're projected around the same amount of points this week.
Yeah, like no, he had an extra point made.
It was 13. Well, Graham Gano, it was they scored 13 points last week.
So they scored 13 points, and it's literally the worst case scenario for what you would expect for a kicker.
Yeah.
The reason they got to 13 was because he missed his second field goal attempt or extra point attempt.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and again, don't get too caught up in the bias here, but I just don't give a shit about Graham Gano. I'd rather just have Dustin Hopkins. I mean, he's got the ability to kick a 50-yard field goal, which will make up for one miss. So I think Dustin Hopkins is fine. I think you can have a little bit of exposure to Graham Gano, but I mean, both these guys are projected for 12% or under, so why not?
I'm gonna cap, most likely, depending on how my lineups go, cap them at 15%, crank the randomness, and just whatever happens. Because in my opinion, that's pretty much how it goes with kickers. They could miss a 50-yard field goal by an inch because the wind blew. It's completely random in my opinion. So defense now. All right, so let's get to this. So Washington football team at 5,600. We've seen it a few times where the defense pays off, where they're highly owned on a showdown and everyone's talking about them, everyone knows about them. I'm more likely to fade them completely in a situation like this. If they're coming in at 25 to 30% owned with like maybe 7 to 10% owned in the captain, I'm going to uncheck them. And I know that's crazy, but there's a situation where they don't pay that salary off at 5,600. We'll look at it when we're building lineups, but in my opinion, there are much better options in that price range, or at least even cheaper, that can score higher fantasy points. So am I going a little overboard here with the football team and fading them? Are you interested in them tomorrow?
Maybe a little bit. I think going with the field isn't going to be terrible, but their ceiling is just capped out. So unless they go out and score 2 touchdowns and get 8 sacks, I mean, it's difficult for them to be in the optimal. I'm not saying that they won't be, but at 5,600, they need to. I mean, you need to be better than who else do we have at 5,600? I mean, let's just look at it real quick. So 5,600, you need to be better than Adam Humphries and as close to as good as Darius Slayton. Which I guess might be possible.
Could be possible.
I guess that's terrible, but
Darius Slayton is coming in at lower ownership. Adam Humphries is coming in at lower ownership. So why not go with them? I mean, this is the NFL. I get it. The football team has a good defense. We know that, but they can score 21 points easily, and maybe they don't get maybe the football team doesn't get a touchdown, or they don't get multiple sacks, and you really need a touchdown from these guys, unless you're Chandler Jones and you're getting five sacks and multiple forced fumbles. They're not going to pay off. They're just not. Even if they hold them to 7 points, it's still not going to pay off. They need actual sacks. You need turnovers.
Yep, I agree, man.
And I'm just look. This is really funny because we've done I think over 80 shows total over the past year and a half or whatever it's been. There's been multiple times where we've done these low total games where you just uncheck the underdog's defense, and those guys come out and absolutely crush it. So I'm actually more intrigued with the $4,200 Giants and getting them in a couple of lineups against a guy like Heineke, who's just not a proven guy, and will probably give you about 2 turnovers in this game. So if one of those turnovers turns into a touchdown, the Giants are in the optimal most likely. Am I crazy?
No, man. I mean, I think it's worth a few lineups on. Again, there's going to be different. It's going to be tough to get different tomorrow night. And the core plays are pretty obvious on both sides of the ball. So you're going to have to get creative. And you're right. I mean, this is still a backup quarterback. At some point, he is going to make a mistake, and if that turns into a touchdown, there is some points to be gained by running the Giants' defense.
All right, let's get over to our fate of the night here.
What's your name? Tony! Fuck you, Tony!
Ellie, you're fading Danny Dimes.
Yeah, man. Like, I don't know. I think I'm gonna have a little bit more exposure to Saquon, just kind of based on the way that it looks like the ownership is gonna end up shaking out. I know earlier in the show we were talking about maybe fading him potentially, but I don't know, dude. If he sits around that 25% mark, it's gonna be hard to come off him. And Danny Dimes just, I don't know. The fumble upside or the fumble risk for me, the interception risk, that those turnovers start to add up. He's not Jameis Winston.
Well, we saw it with Lamar. Those 2 fumbles absolutely screwed the whole slate up for me.
It took him out of the optimal lineup, right?
Yeah.
And the difference is Danny Dimes is not Lamar Jackson, right? He's not Michael Vick either. So, like, he may bust out those runs, but those ghosts take him down. And I think Saquon's a little bit safer of a play, and I think Heineke's kind of a safe way to go tonight or tomorrow night.
So I personally think Saquon, in my opinion, I'm going to fade him, and by fade doesn't mean I'm unchecking him. I'm going to see where ownership comes in. If he falls in a little bit lower because people are scared of that salary and scared of him coming back, similar to how like a lot of the best ball drafts were this year, he fell down. I mean, there was multiple times where he was in the 30s and 40s still, which is insane. People were scared of him. They didn't know how to treat him. I think you can still be a little bit scared after that first performance. But if he comes in like they say he's going to come in around 35 to 40% owned and potentially 15% in the captain, I just want to go under on him.
Yeah.
Because the chances of him paying off that salary, I know you want raw points, but I don't think he can get you the raw points in this particular game. Three or 4 games down the road, yeah, I might have a different opinion on it. But against this defense, like I said, I want to fade almost the entire. I should have just put the Giants running backs because that's more accurate in this case. I just don't love him, and I spelled his name wrong, but who cares? Whatever, you know what I'm talking about. So you seem to be a little bit on the opposite side of me for this, right? You like Saquon more?
I think I'm more neutral. I'm more even with the field, and not even that. I think he should be around 25 to 30% owned, and I think that's kind of be where my exposure is. I'm gonna come under on Danny Dimes. I just don't feel like paying that much, and he's probably gonna be 55, 60% owned, 50%. So again, just I'm getting closer to 35, 40% seems reasonable. I think that's properly owned for him.
Yeah. All right, let's move over to our favorite captain choice for tournaments.
Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
We're crowning their ass, and yes, that is a photo of Logan Thomas as a Giants quarterback. So, Ellie, you're going with Scary Terry McLaurin. I think it's a good choice.
Yeah, in a couple lineups. I mean, not to say you stole my thunder or anything, but I'm right up there with you. Just based on Logan Thomas's price, I think he's probably one of the better captain choices. But I also think Scary Terry is going to go under the radar a little bit.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of, Logan Thomas's pricing, first of all, should stick out to a lot of people, and if the field is kind of adjusting to being a little bit more sharp than they were last season, then that's something to consider. So I think Terry being where he is, the pricing, it opens up some unique opportunity to be a little bit different by jamming him in there. And again, it could be as simple as him going out and having 160 yards on 12 receptions and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He could easily do that, and I don't think anyone would be shocked the next day.
So Logan Thomas, to me, obviously, look, he can get you 4 receptions for 50 yards and 2 touchdowns and be the guy, especially at 7,400. He's the 10th, as of now, he's the 10th highest owned captain for projected ownership. Under football team, Galladay, and Shepard. So to me, I think you just got to try to jam him into a lot of lineups as captain. I really like him, and we'll build with him here in a second. But I think his upside at that salary is really high, and especially at that low ownership. You don't see a lot of guys coming in under 5% like Logan Thomas. You usually end up finding random dudes that you don't really feel comfortable with. It's a purely a dart throw. So I like him, and hopefully his ownership projection stays around the same. Because if that's the case, I'm gonna go super heavy. I might just lock him in a captain and just get as many variations as I can. Hey, why not? It's showdown, man. It's showdown. You got to just be willing to burn your money. Okay. So let's move over to a lineup build. So let's check the optimal first. And I did this a little bit earlier before the show. I'm not gonna do this too much. You got Brown at captain, and then you jam in all the studs below him.
I don't hate this as a cash build.
This is an option. I mean, if Brown can catch you 4 or 5 balls and maybe get you 50 yards, I like it, especially if he scores a touchdown. You're feeling great. But you like this as a cash build?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, look, even if De'Ami Brown has 3 points, you're capturing all the raw points everywhere else. So your floor should be pretty significantly close to that 96 mark right there.
Yeah.
Probably closer to 85, which should be enough to win a double up or something.
Yeah. I don't think I would do this in a single entry, but I would just do it in a 50-50 or a double up, maybe, or a 5-man or 7-man or something. The thing that worries me is I'm not confident that all 5 of these guys can actually hit their median. I'm just not. Like, I don't think that Jones and Heineke can both have a good game. I think one of them is gonna fail potentially, and same with Shepard or same with Gibson. Like, I don't know that all these guys can actually go off. So to me, I'd rather jam in the guy that I think is gonna go off the most, a guy like Gibson or a guy like McLaurin or a guy like Logan Thomas. Put him at the captain and just try to find one dude at $200 or one dude at $1,400. Because if Brown just gets you one reception like he did last week, I personally just think you're screwed. I really do. So I think it is a strategy. I don't know that I'm going to do it this week. All right. So who do you want to build with first?
Let's start with Gibson.
All right. To me, this is the safest play, both floor and ceiling. But the ownership's up there with him. He's going to be owned. I mean, you see that 20% ownership at captain. It's going to be hard. I mean, it's not quite Lamar Jackson on Monday night at 40% at the captain, but you're still going to have to you're going to have to punt with a 10% owned guy or something like that if you're in large field. So who do you want next? You want Heineke or do you want Danny Dimes? Or both?
I think we go Danny Dimes in this one.
Okay. So Danny Dimes. Now, which wide receiver do you want to throw in for him? Or do you want to throw in 2?
Let's do Shepard. And let's do Rudolph.
Yeah. Let's see. Where's he at? Yeah, Rudolph at 3.2K. That's nice.
Let's throw in Terry. And that leaves us 5K, right?
5K. So that gets us...
I mean, Dustin Hopkins isn't terrible in this.
Gets us Humphreys.
Humphreys. Yeah, that's fine.
It's a 3-3.
The only thing that concerns me is just having the 2 pass catchers.
Without the quarterback.
Yeah. But again, that's not awful. If Humphreys has a touchdown on 2 receptions, that's fine.
Well, look,
but
and here's the deal. If McLaurin gets a touchdown, Humphreys gets a touchdown, and Gibson gets you a ton of receptions and 1 touchdown, doesn't necessarily mean Heineke's going to be racking up those points. This is a 21 total for Washington. So there's just 3 touchdowns, and Heineke, if he throws 2 passing touchdowns and gets you around 200 yards passing, who knows? He might not even make the optimal. Possible, but who knows? All right. You want to make any adjustments to this?
Actually, no, I'm cool.
Actually, let's see what the optimal is with him. So Heineke, Brown, I don't hate this actually. This is pretty nice.
Yeah, I don't
So
mind that
3-3.
lineup either.
But look at all this. Look at this ownership. This is a cash lineup for me. I know you got Rudolph at 3%. He's gonna be higher than that. There's no fucking way he's gonna be 3%.
Yeah, he's gonna be higher on bro.
No way. So to me, this is a straight up cash lineup or a single entry potentially. I don't like this as a tournament entry. So let's build one with Gibson and try to get different. Try to get a low owned dude or let's do a McKissick. Let's try to like get freaky with it when it comes to our actual roster construction. Let's actually
do McKissick in football team defense.
Let's do it. Yeah, love that. Now I want to get Danny Dimes here, most likely. I think that him passing in the fourth quarter is going to happen, and then let's get one of his wide receivers, like we said. Let's go with Slayton at 6.6K.
Probably get Galladay and Slayton.
Let's try. Oh, absolutely. You can even get Scary Terry.
Galladay. Yeah.
I mean, if you wanted to go 4-2 here, or you could come up from the football team. So you can get Shepard. You can come up from the football team. What do we got here? 6.8K?
That's serious, Slayton.
I don't hate it.
Yeah, I don't either.
It's definitely a tournament lineup, but I'm telling you, no one's gonna have this lineup. No one's gonna have this lineup at all.
Fucking three of them.
So my point is, if you put Antonio Gibson at captain, you're gonna have to get weird like this. But I don't hate this at all. I don't hate it at all. All right, let's move over to who do you want to build with next? Do you want to go Logan?
Yeah, let's run Logan.
All right, where are you, bro? There he is. All right, let's optimize this and see what happens. Don't hate it. If that's not going to be his ownership, he'll be 5 to 7%, I think.
Yeah.
But still, not I think we need to try to get Brown in more. So let's leave him in. Let's get Heineke in a lineup now. Let's get Danny Dimes in a lineup. I think Danny Dimes is going to be passing a lot, and I think he gets you two passing touchdowns in this game. So I kind of like him more than Heineke now that we're building. So we got 8.4K left per position. Do you want to try to get Terry in, or do you want to get fuck it? Do you want to get Saquon in this?
No, I don't think Saquon works in this one. Let's go with. I mean, instead of Terry, can we go Antonio Brown?
Antonio Gibson.
Or Jesus, yeah, Antonio Gibson.
7.3K. So what do we have right now? We got a 4-1. So we got
Terry Slayton.
Yeah, Slayton.
Yeah, maybe we need to come down off of Gibson. Who are you suggesting?
We can go to Terry.
Terry, 9,000 leads, 1,300. So that would probably give us Shepard after that. Yeah, I think that works.
Yeah, so you can move up to Shepard here.
Oh
no, not quite, not quite. Yeah, so it doesn't even really make a difference. Although, look, I mean, whatever. I'm not scared to leave 1,300 on the floor.
Well,
I'm not worried about it.
What about going from Scary Terry to? Can we do Kenny and Shepard instead of?
Yep, sure can. There you go.
Yeah, I don't hate that, man.
Yeah, I don't hate it either. Yeah, you got Heineke, you got two of his pass catchers, and you're capturing some rushing yards, hopefully from Heineke. Now let's try to fit Saquon in here. Let's see if we can. I just want to see what it's like to build with him. 6,900.
Slayton.
Yeah, Slayton.
I don't hate that either, though.
It's not bad, man. It's not bad. So one thing you could do, obviously, you could get rid of Heineke, and you could pop Antonio Gibson in. That's an interest. It's interesting. You're fading, similar to what we did earlier. You're fading the quarterback with 2 of his pass catchers, but like I said, if Logan Thomas has three receiving touchdowns,
You can look at this a little bit different though too, because I mean, De'Ami Brown, if you just consider him a punt at 1,400,
yeah,
like you're not necessarily. I mean, you're just hoping.
you're hoping for catches.
As much as that projection's cool, like at 1,400, we need 3 receptions for 40 yards, and that's an awesome output. You know what I mean?
And that's something we should talk about here. That projection is ridiculous, in my opinion.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Like,
he had 4 targets and 1 reception. I know he's the second in line for on the depth chart here, but he hasn't done anything. We don't know how good he is yet, and you're going to give him 11, which is more than Darius Slayton, which is more than some of these other guys who've proven themselves. These are median projections, so and I'm sure that it'll be adjusted as we get closer, but I don't like that projection. I'm going to change that in whatever I'm doing, because I don't want him to be jammed into 70% of my lineups, because he will. You do 150 lineups, he'll probably be in 80% of them at that projection.
Yeah, absolutely.
So change his projection down. Don't be afraid to do that. All right, so let's do a Scary Terry captain, and then we'll wrap it up here, guys. Thanks for joining us. We're at about an hour and 6 minutes. Let's do Scary Terry here at captain.
Heineke Jones.
Heineke Jones. All right, so
I mean, man, De'Ami and Logan Thomas.
Let's see. Can we do that? We sure can. Sure can. And De'Ami Brown's going to be high owned, with that projection.
Darius Slayton.
7,100. Do we have enough? Yep. Slayton. That's interesting.
So this isn't a lineup that I hate, and if you're gonna be running Terry McLaurin at captain if he's really projected, anyone above 12%, I think you need to stick to these weird 4-2, 2-4 type builds, right?
Yeah.
Normally, you would expect a 3-3 here, right? Maybe coming off of Logan Thomas and putting in Sterling Shepard or whatever it is to kind of balance out your exposure. But this is how you get different with a McLaurin captain and really not have to sacrifice too much.
So let's do one crazy one here. Let's put Saquon at captain and see what happens. So Saquon's at captain. Now I want to get different here. I want to fade both quarterbacks.
I think you're okay. Like this, don't call me. I mean, if we're getting different, I think you can leave in. Yeah, that's fine. I was actually going to say the other way with Devontae Booker.
Yeah, either so Booker and McKissick are around the same price. What, $400 or $600 difference. So you could do that, but let's do this as a 17 to 10 game. Who do you think is going to be most likely getting these points? I mean, I'm going to go with the running backs here. And you could even do this. I'm getting crazy, but you can do that, or you can go with one of these kickers. You can go with Hopkins. You can go with Gano. What do you want to do here? Because we've already gotten pretty crazy.
Let's actually go Hopkins. And then, for getting rid of both quarterbacks, let's put in Galladay.
One home run hitter. I like it. 8,200 leaves us with 11.2K. That's a lot. So we could plug in Daniel Jones or Heineke.
Or just put in Terry McLaurin.
Scary Terry. But from here, I probably want to go up to pull out the kicker.
Yeah.
And go up to Humphreys.
I mean, I would just go to the Washington defense at this point.
Yeah. Let's try it. Oh, yeah. Hey, dude, that's not bad at all. Although that's a 5-1. No, it's not. Never mind. It's a reverse 2-4.
Yeah, with the running back at captain against the defense.
Dude, nobody's playing this lineup because it's probably pretty damn stupid. But if you're in the Millie Maker, this is the kind of Millie Maker lineup that wins it.
Dude, if Barkley rushes for 80 yards but has 12 receptions, like, I mean, C-Mac still ends up with like 48 fantasy points with no touchdowns. You know what I mean?
Super
so, like,
quiet too. You're like, dude, how did he get to that point? Like, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
So
this scoop and score, and all of a sudden it's paid off. So.
All right, so Ellie, bold take here. Final score on this game, and who is your highest total fantasy point scorer in this matchup?
All right, so I don't know, like bold take. I think I'm gonna just tie that into the score. I think this is 27-21 Washington. Highest scoring fantasy player. I think it's going to be Logan Thomas. I think he puts up, 120 yards on 8 receptions and puts up 2 touchdowns.
I'm actually going to go a little bit different here. I'm going to go like 35-31 Giants. I think this is going to be a shootout.
Crazy asshole.
I know. I could be totally wrong. And, at me on Twitter. If you guys watch this and it's an absolute...
he's going nearly double the over.
Yeah, 14-3 game or something like that, and the Giants don't do anything. Hey, whatever. I think that I agree with you though. I think Logan Thomas will be the highest scoring guy, even if they lose. I think he can be the highest scoring player on the slate for sure. All right, dude, where are you at right now? You're in a different spot.
Yeah, I'm out in Arizona, bro.
Hey man, betting's legal out there too.
Yeah, dude, there's a Sunday bet for the Cardinals game. If there's more than 1 point scored in the game, it's even money. So,
Well,
yeah.
At least you didn't have to reserve your lineups before you went out to Arizona. That's whenever I'd come back home, I'd always have to freaking do something weird in order to play. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's insane. They went from no fantasy sports at all to sports betting.
Yeah,
Just
dude.
0 to 100. Screw it. Doesn't make sense. All right, guys, hit us up in the Discord. Hit us up on Twitter. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Hit the like button. Subscribe. We will see you guys for Sunday Night Football. Take it easy.